Hello, I'm Tom Dawson, and I serve as the current board chair of the Fargo-Moorhead-West Fargo Chamber of Commerce and as chairman of Dawson Insurance, a Marsh & McLennan agency. Thank you for joining us as we celebrate Juneteenth. In just a few moments, you will hear from one of our Professional of Color program members, our mayors, and a phenomenal story about Felix Battles, a former Moorhead resident who was born enslaved, escaped to the North, joined the Civil War as a Union soldier, and upon his return became the pioneer barber of the Red River Valley. It's important for me to note that the Chamber stands firmly behind diversity and inclusion. When we work together and learn from each other, we become a stronger community. And to that end, your Chamber is committed to ongoing and meaningful discussions regarding diversity and inclusion within our metro. We are hopeful that through forums like our Eggs and Issues event on diversity and inclusion in the workplace and our Professional of Colors program, we can contribute to this important dialogue. We know that to make a real difference, we all need to look at ourselves and decide how we can work together to make our region a better, more inclusive place, not only for business, but all facets of our lives. I am also proud of my company, Marsh & McLennan Agency, for having a very deliberate diversity and inclusion environment, which is deeply rooted in our values and principles. Our Dawson Insurance office in Fargo has a team of colleagues designated to develop energy around diversity and inclusion, teaching all of us how to best practice these behaviors every single day. Now, please help me welcome one of our Professional of Color program members, Kelsey Gordon.
Hi, I'm Kelsey Gordon, an Operations Program Manager for Microsoft and a member of the Chamber's Professionals of Color program. POC is dedicated to impacting our community by creating inclusive opportunities for professionals of color to develop personally and professionally through meaningful engagements and a sense of belonging. Thank you for joining us on our virtual Juneteenth celebration. In case you don't know, Juneteenth is a day that is celebrated as the end of slavery in the United States and commemorates June 19, 1865. It was on this day that Union Major General Gordon Granger rode into Galveston, Texas, and announced, in part, this message. The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves. The connection heretofore exists between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. This freed an estimate of 250,000 slaves in Texas. This proclamation came 2.5 years after President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, which freed the slaves in the Union more than 6 months after the 13th Amendment to abolish slavery was passed by Congress, and 2.5 months after General Robert E. Lee surrendered, signaling the end of the Civil War. The following year, in 1866, former Texas slaves began celebrating Juneteenth, also known as Freedom Day, a day that we continue to celebrate.
Hello, I am Fargo Mayor Tim Mahoney. Today, June 19th, or Juneteenth, marks an incredibly important day in the complex history of our country. 155 years ago, many Black Americans received the uplifting and painfully overdue news that slavery had been permanently abolished across the entirety of the United States. Juneteenth is a reminder that we have come a long way, but it is important to recognize the path to racial equality is far from over. The City of Fargo is committed to shining the light on the challenges of racial underrepresentation and institutional racism. We must continue to foster diversity and inclusion to create a better tomorrow. We are here to listen, to learn, and to collaborate with anyone desiring to make this community a better home for everyone. Thank you.
Hello everyone, this is Mayor Jonathan Judd from the City of Moorhead, and I wanted to take a few moments to talk to you about the significance of the holiday known as Juneteenth. Juneteenth comes from a date June 19, 1865, where Union General Gordon Granger with Union troops marched into Galveston, Texas after the Civil War and declared all the slaves within the state of Texas as free. Now, we probably discussed back in school that President Lincoln, by reading the Emancipation Proclamation, declared all the slaves free. But the distinction is that due to the Civil War, the proclamation only pertained to Union states and not those states that left the Union to join the Confederacy. The reason why we should at least acknowledge Juneteenth and also have conversations about it is because as we're looking at coming together to strengthen our community and have conversations about race, it is important to know and understand the significance of these holidays. It is the hope that by having these types of conversations in our communities, we can learn from each other and also broaden our knowledge base about how to build a stronger, inclusive community. So, happy Juneteenth.
Hi, my name is Sunet Rubalcaba. I work as an admission representative at Concordia College, and I'm also the coordinator of multicultural recruitment. Juneteenth to me is, believe it's not only significant for our African American brothers and sisters or the Black community within the United States. I think Juneteenth, it means to me the recovery of the histories of people of color within this context of the U.S. There's something significant about this is that we don't learn about this through textbooks or history courses in high school or sometimes even college. I think that people who don't know their history or people who don't have a historical memory of the struggles and successes of their ancestors are people who are easy to manipulate or people who are easy to oppress. For me, the remembrance of Juneteenth means an act of decolonization and is also an act of resistance. Thank you.
So Juneteenth means to me, it commemorates the end of slavery in America as a recognized holiday. To me, it's empowering as an African American because we're able to come together with celebrations, picnics, family gatherings. It's a time of reflecting. It's a time of rejoicing. In cities all across the country, people of all races, all nationalities are able to come together and reflect on the history, talk about that history as it shaped our society today, and what are the things in which we are continuing to work on as we continue this journey for equity and inclusion in our communities.
I'm Marcus Krieger, a programming director for the Historical and Cultural Society of Clay County, and I'd like to talk a little bit about one of the early African American businessmen in the Fargo-Moorhead area, Felix Battles. And Felix Battles is somebody that we at the Historical Society have been researching for the last 30 years, and it's actually coming together. We're making a statue for him. And so a little bit about Felix. Felix was born enslaved near Memphis in the 1840s. It's very hard to find out anything about any information about a particular person who's been enslaved, but over 30 years we've done a lot of research. We know what plantation that he grew up on. We know the conditions of being a teenage boy who should be, he should be going to 7th grade, but instead he's working in cotton plantations for nothing. Sometime we did find him on a list of possessions owned by a man named William Dawson in near Holly Springs, Mississippi, and it lists Felix, he's about 13 years old, as being worth $600. So it was exciting to see the name of this person that we've been tracking, but it's also you don't want to see him. It's sad. It makes you feel icky seeing it. But by the next time we see his name in print, it's 1860, and he has escaped slavery. We don't quite know the story, but he's free and he's living in the North. He works his way up to Minnesota, frontier Minnesota. He's working in St. Paul on the Mississippi River steamboats during the Civil War, and then in August of 1864 he joins the United States Army, and he joins the United States Colored Troops, the USCT. There were United States Colored Infantry, Cavalry, Artillery, and these were units made up mostly of people like Felix, who were born enslaved, freed themselves, and then joined the U.S. Army to free their family, their friends, their people, and to prove racial equality by defeating the Confederacy. About 200,000 or so, I don't have the exact number, about 200,000 or so African American men served with the Union Army, served in the USCT. And we would not have won the war without them. And that's not me saying that, Abraham Lincoln said that. They made up, by the end of the war, even though they weren't allowed to join the U.S. Army until halfway through the war, by the end of the war, 1 in 10 American soldiers who fought in the Union Army were African American, and a quarter of the U.S. Navy. And the U.S. Navy actually was never segregated. So Felix did fight in the Battle of Nashville. That's one of the most important battles of the war. In the Battle of Nashville, he helped destroy the last Confederate Army of the West. After the war, he married. He worked as he came back to frontier Minnesota, to a brand new town in the early 1870s named Moorhead, and he became a barber. Later newspaper accounts call him the pioneer barber of the Red River Valley. And being a barber was an important, it's an important job in the African American community, especially, now, but especially in the 1800s, because it was a time where African Americans were not allowed to live their full potential as businessmen, but being a barber was one of the few roles that would allow African American businessmen to own their own business, to be middle class, to to be important within your own community, and it's telling that the first African Americans in our region that I know of who ran for public office were barbers. Prince Honeycutt in Fergus Falls was a barber, and Frank Gordon, and he ran for mayor of Fergus Falls. Frank Gordon ran for alderman in Fargo, and he was a barber as well. And Felix was a respected local businessman. Everybody, his obituary, it says that everybody, that he was respected as one of the old pioneers. And even though he never talked about his Civil War service, when he died, there was a procession of veterans, of Civil War veterans who escorted his casket. And then, so what's the statue about? Well, the statue is about a couple of years ago, the debate about whether or not, about Confederate Civil War monuments erupted in America, and it's something that I've been thinking about as a local historian, but also as an artist. It's something that, how do we remember history? How do we celebrate? Who should we look up to in history? And monuments are usually people that you look up to. They're usually like physically up. And one day I was watching TV and I was thinking, who deserves a statue more than Robert E. Lee is Felix Battles. And then I thought, oh, I'm an artist, I can do that. Making art for artists is just what we do. And so I came up with the design with the help of my friend Lyle Landstrom, who's an artist and a civil engineer and who works in metal and sheet metal, metal sculpture. We designed a statue that started as a stencil, and then through various iterations, what we came up with is a statue made out of steel. This is a mock-up. This isn't the original, or this isn't the final product. But what the final product will be. We'll make it determined on where it actually ends up is gonna depend on how might tweak a design a little bit, but we thought that having a statue of Felix will show people that that diversity has always been in our town from day one. And Felix, through Felix and his wife and his extended family, they kind of create the core of an African American community here in Fargo-Moorhead for the next century. It's also, I think, it's the importance of the United States colored troops for the Civil War. As long as we're talking about Civil War monuments, there are not enough monuments to the USCT. They were crucial to winning this war. The reason that we're a United States is because of them. It's also, I think, one of America's best stories. The idea of people who were born enslaved and then become American soldiers, I think is one that we should be telling more. But the exploits at the USCT, the importance of them were purposely written out of the history books by later generations of Southern historians who are trying to, when they build the lost cause myth of the Confederacy. It's a way to honor a guy who I think deserves to be honored, and also a way to talk about the USCT as well in American history. There are no known photographs of Felix Battles, so what we did for the design is we took a photograph of an unidentified African American soldier for the design. But what we do know that Felix Battles was 5'8". So in the design, we blew it up so that from his toes to his cap, he's 5'8". Another thing is this statue was already funded. Through private donations, we've already raised the money, but what we need public input on and what we need help with is figuring out where this should be. So come over to the Yumcom Center sometime, and you can be part of to see the statue, and you can maybe help us figure out where in Moorhead this should be.